We're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. We'll be talking about everything the ledger. So to begin, I'm just going to go ahead and click on scheduler, and we've got a couple test patients on our schedule to work with today. We're going to start with Charlotte Bronte. Let's say she came in, and if I double click this appointment, I can see she's scheduled to have a root canal, or if you just take a look at the appointment, you can see root canal on number 5. We're going to go ahead and assume the doctor completed that transaction, and we're going to post that item from the schedule to the ledger. So I'm going to left click on the appointment to select it, right click for options, change the status to complete, and I do have the hotkey of F2. So the easier way to have done this is select the appointment and hit the F2 key. It opens up our post-appointment transaction screen. I'm going to go ahead and select what we completed today, change the provider if necessary, and go ahead and hit post selected item. I do get an opportunity to create their next recall appointment. I'm going to skip that for now and hit schedule later, and it takes us through right to the ledger. Now, a lot of you may have customized your ledger already. Some of you may not be aware that you can customize your ledger and these little blue headers that we're looking at. So this is kind of the default that you start with as a new client of DentiMax. You have the date, the service, the name of the patient, code, description of the code, provider, tooth number, etc. So we do see insurance paid, patient paid, insurance adjustments, patient adjustments. Personally, I like to see my patient payment and patient adjustment next to each other, so I just click and drag that item where I'd like it to go. So keep in mind that you can reorder these based on what makes sense to you, just by clicking on the blue heading, holding your mouse down and dragging it, and you can see the little 2 arrows there. If I let go of my mouse, that means that that title, that heading is going to end up in that space. So I like those back over here. Another thing we're going to do is customize our view. In a lot of the list screens, you can actually see an option in the options menu that would be in here that says customize view. In the ledger screen, however, because we already had so many options here, we kind of hid that option to customize the view. And a lot of times offices like to set that and leave it as is, so different people in the office aren't changing it. So we kind of made it a little more hidden than on the other screens. If I want to customize this view, I'm going to right click and go to customize view anywhere here in the white space. And then the left hand side is what's available to see. The right hand side is what we're currently viewing. So you see date, name, account code, etc. I like to add insurance 1 paid and insurance 2 paid to this screen. I also like to add follow-up as an option, and I like to add claim number as an option to my screen. So once I have those options here on the right-hand side, I just move those over with the single arrow to the right. I just click OK, and now I've got some additional information that I can see right off the bat just looking at the patient's ledger. Now, just to explain really quickly what we're seeing, Insurance 1 and Insurance 2 paid have boxes in them that will be automatically checked as you post the insurance payment. If the payment has not been made yet by the insurance company, the box will be open, like in this case. That endodontic or root canal that we did today on number 5 obviously hasn't been paid yet because we just posted it, so the box is open. If they do not have insurance, the box will automatically be closed. So in this case, the patient does not have any secondary insurance, which we can see right up here at the top. So by default, that box is going to be checked. It's only open if you're waiting for a payment from the insurance company. So that explains these 2 boxes here. Moving over, we have a follow-up box. If I double click on one of these items, any one of them, I do see that I open up the charge detail for that code. You can manipulate the fee manually from here if you need to, or the tooth number or the provider, and edit those items. You can also go ahead and indicate this item needs to be followed up on. So you have just a little checkbox there that says follow up. When we save our changes, you can see right here now that item is indicated to be a follow-up item. We do have reports, and if I go up to reports and just type in the keyword of follow, we do find our follow-up detailed report. Now, if I'm going to run this, I have a couple options. I can print the report. If I just want to send it straight to the printer, I can preview it, or I can save it to a file on my desktop. If I just want to preview it by default, I just double click on it and it pulls it up. Now, here's a couple of patients on our follow-up report that you can see. The purpose of this report is to follow up with that insurance company and find out why they didn't pay you perhaps yet, if the claim is old, or if they paid you but they didn't pay you what you were expecting. This is a great report to run once a week and have a list of insurance companies that you need to call and follow up with rather than having a note sheet somewhere. Keep in mind you can use your task list under F12 and create a new task by right-clicking to remind yourself to run that follow-up report periodically. Okay, so that's our follow-up option. Also, we have claim number that I added right here at the end. That may not seem like a big deal to most people, but when you go to your claim screen, if you have to go there to pull up the claim, it makes it a lot easier to search via claim number here for whatever it is you're looking for. Okay, so those are just a couple little add-ons that I would throw onto the ledger just to help yourself. Also, if you call the insurance company, they may or may not want to know the claim number that you're referring to. So now that we know how to customize our view, there's a few other options on the ledger screen that I want to go over. At the bottom of the screen, we have the option to view our treatment planned items versus our ledger items. You can select view planned items and see ledger items and planned items at the same time. The difference is completed items are items that you have completed, and those are actual charges on the patient's ledger. And then, of course, we have our treatment plan here as well. So I just want to point out that you're able to have both of those pulled up, or just toggle to only see the planned items. And then obviously most people are going to operate with just looking at ledger items. By viewing planned items, you can actually create a pre-authorization from here for the patient versus doing it from their chart. So I can go ahead to my options menu and click create pre-treatment claim or create selected pre-treatment claim if I've selected a couple of items out of this list. Now, one thing that's important to know is if I go ahead and add a new transaction here, for example, an implant, and let's say on tooth number 12, by default, since we're adding it to the ledger, it's going to show up as a completed item. So what you have to do is change this to planned. Now it's a treatment planned item, and you want to go ahead and remove the date just by using your delete button from here. By deleting the date and making it a planned item, you can then create a pre-authorization that does not have a date attached to the transaction, which is really important when you're sending those pre-authorizations. Now, if I have more than one code to add, I don't want to hit save and then click new again. I want to click save and new. And that's actually going to remember that I am entering planned items without a date. So then I can just go ahead and plug in my next code and my tooth number and keep hitting save and new. Now, if this is the last item, I'm going to hit save changes. And now we've got a treatment plan for these two items that we can create a pre-authorization for. If you have any other questions about pre-authorizations from the ledger, please email us again at training@dentimax.com. So I just switched back to the ledger items, and in a few minutes after we have some payments posted, we're going to go back over this view option and the post date option. Okay, so we've got our charge here on the ledger. What's next is actually creating our claim. So I'm going to go over to my options menu and just click create claim. And we're going to go ahead and say yes to view the claim. And many of you might have been on one of my previous webinars and know that this claim form is interactive. So we can click and type on the claim form and add a narrative perhaps. We also have our NEA Fast Attach tab if you are partnering with NEA to send electronic attachments, and we're able to save that claim. So we're going to suppose that we sent that claim out, and now, of course, the patient's still standing in front of us. We want to go ahead and collect the patient's estimated portion. First of all, you may have advanced knowledge to where you've checked the insurance and you know the patient has already met their $50 deductible and they met it at another office this year. Right here, we don't have any history of them meeting their deductible with our office, so we want to go ahead and adjust this so that the computer calculates properly what the patient owes instead of assuming that they still need to pay that deductible. So I'm going to go over here to my options menu under transactions and click adjust deductible. When I click that, it lets me choose which type of deductible I'm adjusting. In this case, the patient only has a standard deductible that applies. Of course, that information is based on the insurance plan and how you set that up. So if they only have a standard deductible and they have met it, I'm going to go ahead and type in $50 of the 50 has been met, and I'm just going to click post. Now we can see that the computer is tracking 50 of 50 is met, and it went ahead and adjusted the patient's estimate due. The next thing you may be aware of is that the patient, since they met their deductible at another office, they've also used some money at another office. So we want to adjust what benefits they've used or adjust what's left available of their maximum. So again, I go to my options menu and find adjust benefits used. And let's say at a previous office, they have used $220 of their insurance. You can change the date if you'd like to, make that retroactive in the past. At this point, it doesn't matter since it's new information and it just kind of goes into the whole year. So I'm going to go ahead and hit post. And now we can see 220 has been used, plus we're estimating that the patient's going to use about $653 today out of their $2,000 maximum. All right, so up here at the top of the screen, we're showing that Charlotte Bronte is estimated to owe $174.85 out of her total balance of $931.75. We do show that she has Delta Dental of Arizona currently. We also can see that $931.75, part of that is $115 that's over 90 days past due. If I'm wondering where that dollar amount is coming from, all I have to do is look down the balance column here and see how much is owed per each item. So I can see these two items were posted on 7/16/15, and Insurance 1 has not paid those yet. Those charges are now over 1 year old, so the likelihood that we're going to get payment on those is pretty slim unless we sent out the claim and the insurance company did receive it, but they failed to process it for some reason. So we're going to pick up the phone and call the insurance company and make sure we find out what's going on with that. If it turns out those items were not insurable at that time and a claim was created and sent anyway, we can double click those items and we just want to indicate that we're not to bill the insurance for those items, or if it was okay to bill and that just isn't going to get paid, we can go ahead and mark that the payment is completed from the insurance company and save our changes. Now that dollar amount that is due from those two items are moving down from the insurance estimated portion to the patient's estimated portion. So we oftentimes get questions on how to make something the patient's portion if it's an insurance pending item. Well, the only way to do that is to say the insurance is no longer pending. So you either need to post the payment or do what I just did and tell the computer that those two items are completed by the insurance company. Okay, so moving forward, I can now see that the patient owes $278.35 out of the $931.75. Oftentimes we get to this moment and then the patient says, by the way, I have a new insurance plan. So we've already created their claim and we're ready to take their payment. We think we know what they owe, but this is based on that insurance company's fee schedule in this case. And you realize you've got to go back and start from scratch. So let's say that Charlotte tells us she has MetLife instead of Delta. What we're going to do is go ahead and click on Charlotte's name. So we go to her patient information screen. We're going to go to the insurance information tab and we're going to search for her MetLife plan. And perhaps this is her MetLife plan. We're just going to go ahead and select it. And just for the sake of making sure everything works out well, I'm going to click on MetLife, make sure the MetLife fee schedule is attached to the MetLife insurance plan, and it is. So we're going to close the screen and save our changes. Okay, so back on the ledger, you'll see that the insurance company has not changed. This is also a very common question that we get. I changed the insurance information on the patient information screen, but the ledger didn't change. So I still see the old insurance instead of the new insurance. The reason for that is these charges are all attached to a specific billing number. The billing number has a specific insurance associated with it. So our system is able to retain history of what insurance companies you've billed throughout the history of the patient, which is a great thing. You don't have to try and dig through their chart to find out what insurance they had last year. If they start saying, oh, I have my same insurance from last year, I switched back to that. So what we can do is deselect show all recent and open billings. So right now, this is basically showing a combined view of the ledger of all of the different billings the patient may have. So I'm going to uncheck that box. And now we can see there's actually a billing number associated with this set of charges. So on 7/16/15, we can say that the patient did have Delta Dental of Arizona. And the current billing, which was from 7/27/16, today's date, I'm going to click on that one. And we see the root canal that's there, and it still shows Delta Dental of Arizona. This is the billing number that I want to change, number 695. So I want to make sure I'm looking at billing number 695 and go to my options menu and click View Billing Options. At the top, I can verify it's for billing number 695, and this is the date of that billing number. You can name the billing number if you'd like to. So if I want to know that this is the MetLife billing, I can go ahead and plug that in right there. Now, this is the most important step. We want to replace Delta Dental with MetLife. Of course, we don't want to search for MetLife all over again because we've already added it to the patient's information screen. So we have our easy button here on the left that says Fill Current Insurance. When I click that button, it's going to replace Delta Dental with whatever the patient's current insurance is from their patient information screen. We also get a couple questions here. It says the insurance for this billing has changed. It's referring to this billing number and all of the transactions tied to that billing number. Do we want to update the transaction amounts with the new insurance fee schedule? So when they had Delta Dental, we had Delta Dental's fee schedule on the patient's ledger. Now that we know they have MetLife, we want MetLife's fee schedule attached to these charges that are on this billing number. So I'm going to say yes to this question. Now the next question is, do the transactions need to get billed to the new insurance? We know we already created a claim, but that claim was tied to Delta Dental. So yes, we want the transactions to get billed to MetLife, not Delta Dental. So we're going to go ahead and say yes to this question as well. Now we can see it's got MetLife. All I have to do is close the screen. And now we're back to looking at all billing numbers. At the same time, we can see a previous billing had Delta Dental. Their current billing, which is the furthest to the right, is MetLife. Once again, if we uncheck that box, show all recent and open billings, I am able to toggle back and forth between the different billing numbers that we had and different sets of transactions to see where those transactions went to specifically. Okay, so that's how you can update the ledger with the new insurance. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just show all recent and open billings. I'm going to go ahead and create my claim because I have to do that for MetLife now versus Delta Dental. And the NEA Fast Attach error that we're getting is just basically saying that I'm not live with NEA Fast Attach, which of course this is a demo system. So now that I've created my claim, I can see the root canal here, and we're showing our office fees is what's getting billed out on the claim form, which is correct, and that is going to MetLife. Okay, and there was a question that was asking, can we follow up on a pre-estimate? So I'm assuming what you mean is, can you mark an item as a follow-up item that's on the pre-authorization? If I go back to planned real quick here and find our items that are planned items, you can double click on those and mark them as follow-up items. Yes, absolutely. Another thing that's important to know is if you go to your claim screen, and we look at any pending claims here, depending on your screen resolution, you may be able to see this top claim is gray. So that whole line is gray. Any gray items are pre-authorizations in the software. So you're able to go ahead and view those very easily just by looking for the color of the item. Another good indicator is when I select that item, we do have the option to mark the pre-authorization received versus a regular claim. You don't get that option. Okay, great question. And again, I'll be checking on questions periodically. If you guys have any, feel free to message them over. Okie dokie. So now that we've created our claim for MetLife instead of Delta Dental, we're going to go ahead and collect the patient's estimated portion. So real quickly here, I'm just going to close the screen and show you that if we had to get back to the patient's ledger, all I have to do is select the patient's appointment and click on ledger here at the top, and that easily takes me back to the patient ledger screen. So we've got our date of service, 7/27/16, for our root canal. We know that the patient has already met their deductible, and we added that there. That deductible was met for Delta, however, because that's the insurance they had when I added that the deductible was met. So if I want to indicate that the root canal deductible has been met for MetLife, perhaps at another office with MetLife, again, I'm just going to go to my options menu and adjust the deductible. Let's suppose they haven't, and we're just going to go ahead and collect that patient portion. We're showing the patient owes $287.06. Sometimes the patient will pay you more money than what you're estimating. Let's say Charlotte knows that she has more treatment coming. She has to have a crown done and a post and core buildup and maybe some other fillings. So she just says, I'm going to give you $500 today. You go ahead and apply it to my account, and, I'll catch up with you as things start to wash out. What we're going to do is go to our options menu, and under enter a payment, click add patient payment and adjustment. Once I select that option, I do have the choice to choose how she's paying me. I'm going to go ahead and say she gave us a check, and that check number, we'll just throw something in there. If I wanted to know, again, what her estimated portion is, we do have it laid out here. This is her total account balance. And if she is only paying you her estimated portion or her total account balance, you have a couple of easy buttons to use. Just click pay this amount next to the item that has the correct payment, and it'll automatically distribute that payment to each line item based on where the computer is estimating she owes it. So our accounting system is line item accounting. A lot of other dental software basically let you post charges to the account. They let you post payments and adjustments, but you're just throwing those onto the account at random. They're not actually linked to any specific charge. I don't know about you guys, but I've worked in some software where I had to figure out why the patient owed $12 for the last year. And I've had to print out a year's worth of transaction history, circle charges and circle payments and circle adjustments, and try and match them all up myself manually. So that can create a lot of work. Our line item accounting system does that for you as you go, so that you're not having to catch up and figure it all out later or pull out tons of EOBs to find out why the patient owes you that $12. So that is the beauty of line item accounting, is that you're able to directly apply the payment towards the charge, which in this screen you can see each individual charge. You can see the fee that we billed out, what we're estimating the insurance to pay, if they've paid anything yet or we've done any adjustments yet towards that item, and what the patient's estimated portion is per that item. If the patient's paid something already or you've given a discount, you'll see that here, and then the balance, of course, per item. And then again, it just has a summary. After all of that, insurance due, this is what we're expecting them to pay, and so that is for item, which is the root canal, and then this is what we're expecting the patient to pay. If we click pay this amount, it's going to, like I said, automatically distribute that payment based on what the patient due amount is. So if they are paying what they should be paying, you could just click that button and hit save changes and you're done. If they are paying something less than the dollar amount you're expecting, maybe they're only paying you $200, the computer is going to try and pay the oldest item first in full. So the oldest items we have are from 7/16/15. Okay, and so those items had $50 due and $65 due. So it goes ahead and applies $50 and $65. Whatever's left out of that $200 goes to the next oldest item on the list, which would be our root canal. Okay. If you wanted to pay the root canal off because maybe the doctor is considering writing off these other two items, you can go ahead and just manually adjust the dollar amounts next to each item. So we have 172.06 applied here towards the 172.06. The patient now has an estimated credit of $27.94 unless I go ahead and apply that $27.94 to another item. Okay. Now their $200 is fully distributed amongst these two charges, and I can see the payment amount is here. Distributed payment also shows $200. Since it's green, that means you distributed their full payment, which is usually what you want to see. Now, I'm going to go back to our original scenario that the patient is paying us more than what their estimated portion is. They're going to give us $500 instead of the $287.06. So the computer knows where to put the $287.06, and it plugs it in here against each line item, but it doesn't know where to add the extra $212.94. So what you can do is go ahead and save your changes, and what's going to happen is the computer is going to count the difference as a credit on the patient ledger. So we can go ahead and say yes to that. And here at the top, we see patient credit, and that is directly applied to the patient's ledger. If you do see it on the patient's ledger, it will also be on your day sheet. If you do not see it on the patient's ledger and it is in a pink box here at the top, that money will not be on your day sheet. It will, however, in either scenario, be on your deposit slip. So some of you may be asking why sometimes your day sheet doesn't match your deposit slip. And that is based on whether or not that money was actually distributed to the patient's ledger or if it's just being counted as a credit here in a pink box. If it's a credit in the pink box, it is not going to be on your day sheet. Okay, that credit in the pink box is basically there to use for a later date. So it's like a prepayment that you're just holding and waiting to apply to a charge that the patient has down the road. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete that patient credit. So I have it selected. I'm just going to hit delete. And it's telling me that that part of the payment is part of a total $500 payment. I'm going to go ahead and say yes to reduce the amount of that payment. And I'm also going to delete the other piece of that payment. To delete the other piece of that payment, I have to be in the detailed view of our ledger. If you're just looking at the summary view, it's just showing you a summary of transactions and payments that have happened to that item. So if we go to the detailed view, it actually shows you the breakdown of the detail of the payments or adjustments that have occurred directly to that charge. So here is part of our payment today, 172.06. We're going to go ahead and select that and hit delete transaction. And yes, I'm still going to reduce the total payment. And then I've got the other piece of the puzzle here, the $50. I'm going to delete that as well. And then we have this item that I'm going to delete as well. Okay, so now we're kind of back to where we started. And I'm going to go back to add patient payment and adjustment. And once again, let's say they paid us $500. The computer will, again, try to automatically distribute that money. And I want to point out down here at the bottom of the screen, if you do not want that credit to show up in the patient's ledger as in distributed as its own credit item like we just saw a moment ago, and you want it to be part of the pink box, what you'll do is click this box, do not post family credit to the ledger. And then we'll save our changes. Again, it's just telling us we have $212.94 that's going to be a credit. I say yes to that. Now at the top of the screen, we see $212.94 instead of a green patient credit item. Okay. And again, the main difference is the green item on the ledger is going to show up on your day sheet, and you can use that adjust credits button we had a moment ago to redistribute that money, or you can just hold the credit here at the top, and when you're ready, you can distribute it. We'll go over that here in a few minutes. So we're just going to leave the credit here at the top of the screen, and we're going to go ahead and assume that we have now received our insurance check payment in a few weeks later. So I'm going to go to my options menu and click New Insurance Payment. And I've got check payment here. I'll go ahead and plug in our check number. And actually, MetLife is the company that paid us for this, so I'm going to switch that first. And again, plug in the check number, plug in the dollar amount that they paid. Perhaps the insurance company has given you $520. And once I hit Save Changes or Distribute, the computer is recording this payment. So if for some reason you are not able to completely distribute that payment to each transaction right now, just know that that payment is recorded and you're going to pick it up in the payment screen. Do not post it again. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes to distribute that payment. And now we're in our EOB entry screen. Here's the one item that we have pending that we're waiting on an insurance payment for. The balance for that item is $688.25, and we were expecting $688.25 from the insurance company. We're going to go ahead and say they paid us $520. So here, I'm just going to type in the $520. And we can go ahead and add an adjustment here of, let's say you have to do a write-off of $200. Okay. Now, because 500 plus 200, 520 plus 200 equals 720, $720 is more than what the balance on this item is. We get this pink box over here. It says we're going to be creating a credit on the account for this item. Because if the balance is $688 and you pay $720, obviously there's extra money there. That extra money, as we all know, belongs to the patient. They paid us more money than what we were expecting that they should have paid. So we do have the option here to decide how we want to handle the credit. So if we click Change Setting in this pink box, it shows us our options. We can either distribute the credit balance to other charges for the patient and the family, which means that money, the extra money that the patient paid, is going to get overflowed onto a different item, and you're going to see some adjustments there, taking the credit from that item and moving it to another item. You can make a debit adjustment to increase the total fee, which means maybe the insurance company paid you more because they actually have a larger allowance than what you thought they did or what you had in the computer. So let's say they allowed $720 for that item as a contracted amount instead of the estimated $688.25. So if you want to absorb that credit, you can make a debit adjustment to increase the total fee that you're billing, basically changing the dollar amount for that item. You have the option to do nothing also, which means the computer will not automatically apply any adjustments to the ledger, and then you can manually choose how to correct that ledger item because it's going to have a credit on it. So I'm going to go ahead and say do nothing, and I'll show you how to manually make those corrections. Most of you are probably familiar with the auto pay adjust codes where the computer makes adjustments for you. If not, and you need some help with that, again, please email us training@dentimax.com and we can help you with that. So I'm going to choose to do nothing and click OK. And a couple other options of this screen I want to go over. We do have the option of marking this item as a follow-up item if for some reason you knew you needed to follow up with the insurance company regarding the payment that they're making. You also have the option to update what the computer is tracking as the payment history for this charge. So if I click this little green dot, it's going to tell me that we were expecting $688.25 from the insurance. So we want to update that expected amount for this code to be $520 instead of the $688.25. If I say yes, it's going to change the history for this particular MetLife plan only and say anytime this code is billed out, we're expecting a $520 payment instead of $688.25. If this is the norm, we're going to say yes. If this is an unusual payment because of the patient maxing out of insurance or some sort of downgrade or loophole that is only pertaining to this patient, maybe a frequency limitation or something like that, you're going to want to say no. Or if this amount is different because of a deductible, also you're going to want to say no because that's not a reflection of the true payment if there weren't a deductible applied. Okay, so we're going to just go ahead and say no and not update the insurance for now. And then you do have an option here to add a little ledger note to this item. So if there is something unusual that you're following up on, or you just want to add a note based on what the EOB says, just click inside this box next to that line item and say yes to create a billing note for this transaction. You do have a couple options in your system already for note codes, and you can choose claim printed, statement note, or statement printed. If ever there is something that I want to customize, I just choose note, and then whatever you type into the description is what you will see on the ledger, and also what you can choose to have print out on the patient's statement. So perhaps I'm going to add a little note, insurance maxed out, or something like that. And we can save our changes. Now we actually have a ledger note tied to that specific code. I'm going to go ahead and click Post Payments and Close. But I just want to point out you have a couple other options here. If you want to show previously paid transactions or show transactions another insurance company has paid, you can go ahead and check those boxes, and you'll be able to pull up other items that have been marked as paid from another insurance plan or that were previously paid. And we'll go ahead and close our screen. Now back on the ledger, we see our charge once again. We see our patient check payment, or part of it anyway. We see our note that the insurance is maxed out that I just added manually. We see insurance check payment for $520, and we see insurance adjustment for $200. So this particular item, since I chose to do nothing with that credit, it's now showing they have a negative balance of $31.75 on this line item. So now we've got a credit directly on their ledger outside of the prepayment that we have up here that's posted. If, again, we switch to the summary view of the ledger, we can also see that they do have a credit there, and we're able to deal with that as we have more transactions. If we just want to refund the patient the $31.75 because maybe they don't have any other pending treatment, what you would do is go to your options menu and click Issue Patient Refund. From here, you can see it says refund code instead of payment code, refund amount instead of payment amount, and refund instead of payment under the distribution. So here I would choose my refund code, and if you don't have one, you're going to want to create one. So this says refund check, so refund to patient via check. I would plug in the check number that we're giving the patient and put in the amount that we're refunding. Let's say out of $31.75, we're giving them back $10. That's probably unrealistic, but I want to leave part of the credit on the ledger to show you how to deal with the rest of it. So just as an example, we're going to roll with the $10. So the computer automatically knows that that $10 should be refunded from this item that has the credit. It has a credit, so therefore it is showing up in red. So anytime you see red, that means that there's some sort of credit on that item. And we're going to go ahead and save our changes. And now we can see the balance on that item is $21.75. And again, you're not really seeing how that's broken down because we're looking at our summary view of the ledger. If we switch to detailed view, we can see all of the payments and notes and adjustments applied to that item. And then there's our refund that was taken out of that item. What we want to do next is just add a new transaction. Let's suppose the patient comes back in the next day. I pointed out down here in the bottom right corner the post date previously, and we're going to go ahead and use this now. Some of you may be posting backwards, meaning you do the billing for the office, but they don't give you the charges till the end of the day, and you post them the next day. Usually you don't post forward in time, but that's what we're going to do to go ahead and just simulate a situation. So you are able to change the post date, so you don't have to keep changing the date on each transaction. So that might make it easier for some of you who are doing billing for some offices where you're just billing in bulk and you're billing backwards in time. Okay, so I have my post date here in the bottom right corner. I'm going to go ahead and click New Transaction, and automatically it has the 28th on there instead of the 27th. I'm going to go ahead and throw on a filling for the patient. We'll say number 8 in Sisal. It is a completed item. I do see my fee here. I see my provider. I'm going to save my changes. So here's our item for $141.41. If I want to distribute this credit to that transaction because we know they're going to owe a patient portion for that, I have a couple of options on how to do it. Some of you may have an Adjust Credits button on some of your ledgers right now. What that means is if you click the Adjust Credits button, it's automatically going to take a credit from wherever it's at on your ledger and apply it to the oldest item with a balance first that shows the patient owes that balance. So if you're expecting a patient payment towards something with a balance, by clicking Adjust Credits, it's going to automatically apply that credit to the oldest item first. In this case, we only have one item, so the credit directly went here. Anytime you see an auto pay adjustment code, which we can expand this screen a little bit, auto pay adjust, that means the computer did an auto adjustment. So here's the patient credit. It took $21.75 from this line item, and it moved that credit here to $21.75, directly paying towards this item, and we can now see the credit there. So all it did is adjusted the money from this item down to this item. Some of you don't like to see the auto pay adjust code, and you like to manually do the adjustment yourself and choose what item that credit might be going to instead of paying off the oldest item first. In that case, we're going to go ahead and use our view down here at the bottom just to show you how this works. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to tell the computer I only want to see adjustment codes. This just makes it easier for you to focus in on those auto pay adjust codes to delete them so you can deal with the situation manually yourself. Anytime the computer does do an auto adjustment, you will always see a blue item, a blue line item, and a red line item. That is because the blue is taking money or credit away from that transaction. The red is adding a credit to another transaction. So these two items wash each other out to equal 0. So you're really not adding money to the account or taking money from the account. You're just shuffling the money from one item to the next. So since we're focused on only our adjustment codes here by changing our view down at the bottom, it makes it a lot easier for me to get straight to the point and select this and hit delete transaction. And it's telling me it also has an opposite matching adjustment. Do I want to delete both adjustments? I'm going to say yes. Okay, and now I'm going to bring back all of the different types of transactions to the ledger. All right, so now we're back with a $21.75 credit here and a balance of $141.41. If I want to manually adjust this item, what I'm going to do is go back to enter a payment and add patient payment / adjustment. Click on that option. I'm going to ignore my payment options up here because we're not actually paying anything. We're just going to use an adjustment code. And you can also create different types of adjustments if you'd like to label it something else that says credit transfer, something to that effect. I just like to have adjustment on mine, but let's go ahead and say you are wanting to see credit transfer instead of adjustment. So to create a new adjustment code, all I have to do is click on the magnifying glass next to the adjustment codes. What that does anytime you see a magnifying glass is it takes you to the master list of that field, in this case, adjustment codes. So I just click that button. I'm going to go to my options menu and click new code. And at the top, I'm just going to label this credit and TRX for transfer. In the description, which is what you see on the day sheet and mainly what you look at on the ledger, I'm just going to spell it out, credit transfer. And then the type of code this needs to be is an adjustment code. Now, because we may want to use this item as a positive dollar amount and a negative dollar amount, at the bottom of the code, we're going to click Allow Positive Amount. Adjustments by default are going to be negative, which means they're going to be credits by default. We want to make it to where it could be a credit or a debit. It could add money or take away money. So we're going to go ahead and select the box here to allow positive amount and save our changes. Now that I've added the new code, in our drop-down menu, we have credit transfer. And then here, we have our credit, $21.75, and here we have the only item that has a balance, okay, of $28.28 is the patient's estimated portion of the $141.41. So because this is a negative, in the adjustment column, I'm going to type positive 21.75. And then again, remember, by default, adjustment codes are negative, so that's why I added a positive there. And here, I'm just going to type 2175 without a positive or negative because it'll automatically be negative. Plus 2175, and you add that to minus 2175 equals 0. So we're not adding money to the account or taking money from the account. We're actually adding money to a specific charge and taking it from another charge. So we're just shuffling money around here manually. Then all I need to do is save my changes. And here we have our credit transfer code. We took 2175 from here and added it here. The main difference is this is a different type of code. So this should tell you someone manually added that adjustment instead of the auto adjust code that was there before. Can you enter a note from another screen? So that was one of the questions we've got. So you have just the two options to add a ledger note to a specific item. One is when you're posting the EOB and you have that little box that you can click on. Your other option is to add a ledger note directly from the ledger. So that's a really good question. If I wanted to, let's say, add another note about this resin composite regarding the credit transfer, what I can do is select the transaction I want to add a note to, go to my options and click Add Ledger Note. And then here, again, you have your different note codes that are available. I might create a new note code so I don't have to keep adding it on the fly. I can just have it as a standing note code. So I'm going to click my magnifying glass, click New Code from my Options menu. And here at the top, just put in a code and a description. The type of code you want it to be is a note code, of course, so that it shows up in the right drop-down menu when you go to choose it. So let's just say, for example, we're going to add a note code that says insurance downgraded procedure. That may not apply to this given transaction, but just we're doing an example here. So the code I'm creating is downgrade, and I'm going to save my changes. Now, if I want to use that as a default note, I can just select it, choose to print that on the statement, and save my changes. And it's automatically attached to that transaction that I applied it to. So you can see that on the ledger, and it'll also print out on the patient statement. Okay, great question. You can create as many different standing note codes as you'd like to, just the way I showed you right now. If you don't want to go through a patient's ledger to create just a bunch of them, you can go to Setup, Set Up Accounting Codes, click New Accounting Code, and again, just work through the process and make sure the type of code you enter is a note code. So we want to go ahead and discuss moving a payment, and we can kind of, for the moment, forget everything else, the line of thought that we were on a moment ago. Sometimes you have an item that gets paid, and then it turns out the insurance company paid it, and you just want to transfer that payment from one item to the next, or it just accidentally got applied to the wrong item. So let's say we have this payment here for $172.06. I don't have anything with enough money, so let me just create a new transaction real quick so this makes sense to everybody. We're going to do a crown, a number 6, save our changes. Okay, so let's say we want that $172.06 to go towards this crown here on tooth number 6. All I need to do is double click on the actual payment itself. Again, you can't double click on it unless you're in the detailed view of the ledger. Once I open up the detail of that payment, I can see that $172.06 is part of a $500 payment that was made on this date. I can click View Check if I want to see how that money did get distributed. We posted $500, but only $287 of that is distributed. So the rest of that money is considered an unapplied deposit right now. If I just want to move the payment $172.06 to that other item, down at the bottom I can see that item got paid towards, on this date of service, the root canal, D3330. So if I click the little magnifying glass, it actually lets me choose a different item to apply that money to and move it somewhere else. So I'm going to move it to crown on number 6, so it's highlighted in blue, and then I just hit select. Now I can save my changes, and on the ledger, the payment is no longer attached to this item, but it is attached down here towards this crown, 172.06. Okay, so that is the easiest way to move a payment from one item to the next if you're just picking it up and moving it. If you're only moving part of that payment, you're going to do a credit transfer here as an adjustment instead of just moving that whole portion. Okay. Another scenario is, let's say the patient does come back. They had enough charges here on their account to where we can apply that $212 prepayment to one of these items. So we're ready to basically distribute this money to one of their ledger items and add it to our date sheet. What I need to do is click on that amount, the blue lettering there, and once again, it shows me this was a payment of $500. We only distributed to $87.06. So I want to go ahead and click distribute so we can distribute the rest of that money. The rest of that money is $212.94. The computer is going to automatically try and distribute that payment based on where it thinks it should go, again paying off the oldest item first, which is from 7/27 instead of the charges on 7/28. If I do want to manipulate where the payment goes, again, I can just click in the boxes and make my changes directly on the ledger. Let's say I want that whole credit to go towards that crown on number 6 that we just posted. I just type in the whole dollar amount next to that item. Okay, now we can see $212.94 matches the $212.94. This dollar amount is in green, so green means you're good to go. You can go ahead and save your changes. Now we can see 500 of the 500 is posted. We can close the screen. And now that $212.94 is no longer a prepayment up here at the top of the screen. And once again, we can see that right here, directly attached to this item. Now, I made a boo-boo and did not change my payment code. I left it as refund. The computer will automatically retain the history of whatever the last type of code is that you used. So, if you want to adjust that and have the proper code, because this was obviously not a refund, this is a payment, you double-click that item and just change the code right here. And that was patient check payment. And we just save our changes, and now I've edited the description on that item. One of the questions I got is, how do I void a payment? It really depends on your office and what security clearance you have. If you posted a payment and you just did it badly, you put in the wrong check number, you put in the wrong dollar amount, you didn't distribute it yet, you just want to start over, you have to be in the detailed view of the ledger in order to select that item and delete it. So we're in the detailed view already. We're just going to select one of these items and you hit delete transaction. That gets rid of it altogether. If you don't have the security clearance to be deleting payments, or you don't want to delete the payment and you simply want to adjust it and show it as a refund or something like that, you're going to go over here to enter a payment and add a patient payment and adjustment and use your adjustment codes and decide what you're going to do with it. So, if you have a specific scenario that you want to run through with us, because it really depends on the situation as to how you handle that payment, please, again, shoot us an email to training@dentimax.com and we can talk about that a little more in depth. Okay, next question is, I need to send a statement note to the patient. So I showed you how to attach the add ledger note to a specific item. If you want that to show up on the statement, just make sure that inside that note code, when you're applying it, that you click print on statement. Whatever is here in the description is what's going to print out for the patient. So sometimes there may be occasion where it's just too much to add a whole big paragraph to this space, which it is. You can select the item and add a ledger note. Just choose the note option and put, please call the office to discuss perhaps. and choose to print that on the patient's statement. If it's something that really just needs to be explained and you've tried reaching that patient and haven't had any response back. So that's an option there for you. And looks like we've got another question here. We only need to send 2016 statements to the patient, not 2015 history on the ledger. How can we isolate only 2016? Okay, now that's a really good question. The statements by default are going to print anything where there's a balance. So it doesn't matter that this was in 2015. If they had a balance from 2015, when you choose print statement, it's going to print out because you want to try and collect all of the patient's money, not just the money from this year. So the purpose of the statement is to collect money. Now, if you only want to print out charges for a certain date range and payments in a certain date range, what you're going to do is click Print Ledger. A lot of offices use this option for the purpose of giving the patient like a tax statement. The ledger is the only option that will let you choose a date range. So I can just say January 2015 through December 2015. Click OK, and here's the only charges and payments attached to it that occurred in 2015. Now, this is showing a total balance, and that is the total balance on their current account, not the total balance for that date range. So keep that in mind. You never want to mislead the patient into thinking that they didn't owe you money for that date range if they do, in fact, have a balance on their account right now. So that's the reason that the total account balance will show up on that ledger as well. So that, again, you're saying you still have a balance. Here's what happened in that date range, but this is what's current. We do have another report if for some reason there's a unique circumstance that you want to only print out charges in a specific date range, regardless of whether or not they owe money prior to then. Please email us at training@dentimax.com and we can send you that report. And again, you just want to be very picky as to when you're going to use it so that people aren't misled thinking they didn't have a balance prior to then. I have seen some unique situations where an office, maybe there's a new doctor there that bought an existing practice, and the old doctor said anything that was owed when I was there, just go ahead and leave on their account. Don't bother trying to collect it. That money belongs to me. So you're starting fresh, really, with patients with existing balances. In that case, what I would suggest doing is creating a new billing from the start for that patient. What that's going to do is separate the history of their new transactions from their old transactions. To create a new billing, what you're going to do is uncheck this box to show all recent and open billings, and you would click New Billing. That way you kind of start with a fresh ledger for today's date, okay? And then you can start posting charges. And there's some segregation between now versus then when they saw the other doctor. So that is what I would suggest in some situations. Now, I know we're pretty much out of time, so I'm just going to check and see if there's any other questions. And if you guys have specific situations that we did not go over today that you have questions on, again, please email us, training@dentimax.com. So thank you guys so much for being with us. I know that hour went by really super quick. We went over a lot of different scenarios, and we are more than happy to help you further. Please shoot us an email or give us a call directly at 1-800-704-8494. The training extension is 2, training extension 2. You can also email training@dentimax.com. Thank you so much. Have a great day.